Hey, Mike, how are you? Of
I'm great, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
course, man. Appreciate you joining and taking your time out of an early morning for you. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
The reason why I'm a little tardy this morning is a little background. I have a 2.5-year-old son, and he's battling a bit of an illness. It was a rough night for me and my wife, Kel, as we all the parents out there know when your kid's sick, everything stops. So it was a rough night of sleep. But beyond being a dad, I'm a recruiter. I've been in the recruitment space for nearly 15 years. I won't tell you how old I am, but it's a long time, and always on the agency side. So it's given me a really interesting purview of how individuals hire from large enterprise, Fortune 10, 50, 100 companies to startups. So I've seen the hiring process range from big company to small company, across executives to entry level positions. So I've had a really good opportunity of analyzing and assessing how hiring is done. And through that experience, man, there's some flaws. There's some massive inefficiencies of how hiring is done. And it was in 2020 that I had this spark, this moment where the labor market was shifting and candidates were getting more control and more power in the hiring process, rightfully. And organizations didn't know how to deal with this vulnerability that they were experiencing in terms of, now we have to try to attract top talent. We never had to before. So what does that look like? And I saw a massive opportunity to disrupt how hiring is done.
That's awesome. And we will definitely talk about a lot of the flaws because I've been on both sides when I was in corporate, both using a recruiter as a hiring manager and being recruited. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what is the agency side. You mentioned that. Is there like another side? Tell a little bit about that difference because I think a lot of people just view the recruiters as like the enemy or just the middleman who always delays things and doesn't really provide value. So tell us a little bit about the different sides and how you actually do provide value.
Yeah, there's definitely different perceptions out there of recruiters. And I think it's just because there's really no barrier to entry to be a recruiter. All you need is an internet connection and a landing page, and you can call yourself a recruiter. There's millions of them out there. There's a lot of great ones, and then there's a lot of not so great ones. But generally, how it works, and we'll use a big organization as an example, if you need to hire, you go to your internal recruitment team to try to help. And if they have capacity issues or don't have success, then they go to outside help, which usually is an agency or an independent recruiter to help. I've always been on that side where I've been an agency. So I've been hiring for people that work in my organization. I've been hiring for organizations outside that have been engaging us to hire on their behalf. So that's the agency model.
And then the difference between hiring for an executive or looking for an executive position versus like somebody who's maybe an individual contributor or a middle management. Middle management tends to be a lot of self-promote in company promotion, but there is sometimes where that is found via recruitment. How do you differ your strategy as a recruiter from an agency?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually was just having this conversation with my business partner the other day, because there are some differences, and there are, in terms of hiring an executive versus an entry level position. Obviously, there's different steps and different vetting process that needs to be taken, but at the core, the process is the same. All you're doing is identifying the right individual at the right time with the right skills for that job. So there are a lot of agencies that overcomplicate this and have niches, or claim that they know how to hire this type of individual, or they know this labor market very well. But it's all the same, man. It's a recruiting process. It's connecting people. It's really getting to know individuals, who the candidates are, and more importantly, who the hiring managers are, because that's the connection between people is what makes a successful work engagement. Your boss is the largest contributor to success. And there's that saying where we don't leave companies as much as we run from bad bosses. The inverse of that, I believe to be true, where you don't join a company, you choose to work for a leader. So that's my entire philosophy is, if that's true, the traditional hiring process fails because there's no mention of who the hiring manager is as an individual, maybe in title if you're lucky, but we know nothing about them when we're looking for a job until we get to the interview stage, which is a major flaw and a massive opportunity to just do it a little bit better.
Yeah, agreed. That's the person you're going to spend the most time with, at least definitely in the beginning. That's the person who's going to show you the ropes, person who's in charge of potential compensation gains, etc. And you mentioned that there's a lot of pieces in the hiring process that's broken. Is that the main one in your mind, or is there something else?
At the core of that's it. And then if you look at all of the components of the hiring process, it just fails to reflect that belief. And
Mhm.
I find it hard to debate with someone that the hiring manager or the relationship between people is the most critical part of a job. We're not matching skills. We're not matching technical competencies. We're matching people. We're matching skills. We're not just looking at experience in isolation. It's who those individuals are and how they work, not what they've done. And if you look at perfect examples like the job description, I use that as an easy way to kind of prove my point is this is the only piece of marketing collateral that exists to market a job. And if
Mhm.
we think that the bosses has, even if you don't want to agree with me and say it's not the most important thing, we can all agree that it is a very important thing to the job. It's not even in there. Think about if you were marketing a product or service and you had a very important feature and it wasn't
Mhm.
even mentioned. That's a flaw. That's a massive problem. So that's where I've started my micro disruption of the process is let's just start there and figure out a better job description. And then
Mhm.
we can work our way inwards to the entire process. But if we can't agree philosophically that we need to start leading and uncovering the people behind these documents, then we can't fully disrupt the process.
Yeah, I had that written down in my notes of things to ask you because, like we mentioned, I've been on both sides of this, and the generic job posting is like the number one thing that's I feel like wrong in the process as well. So I'm glad that people like you are helping solve that issue. But one of the things that comes to mind is, okay, are you going to write like an excerpt of an about me section for each of the hiring managers, or like the matrix correlations maybe between a person who can report to three different people in a dotted line? How do you can't really get a personality written across a page in a job description. So how exactly do you counteract this problem?
I'm glad you asked. And I swear to the audience, I didn't ask for this layup in terms of how we're actually going to do this. But think about the number one recruiting tactic that will remain undefeated, the personal referral. Why
Mhm.
is that so effective? Because it's casual, it's a conversation. You're understanding, not, hey, I'm looking for someone that has 10 years experience. They have a university or college degree. They have this and this. You're having a conversation with somebody to understand what is the role? What are they actually looking for? What do they like? What we've done, because we're in such a great digital age and opportunity, we've done a video job description. All we do, we interview the hiring manager. We ask them questions. What's this job? What's it all about? What's your team like? How do you guys celebrate wins? What's the latest win you've had? What's the impact your team has? What are you like? What would people say it's like working for you? What's the best boss you've ever had? This
Mhm.
3 to 5 minute edited video serves as a job description and is way more impactful than reading about a job. Just hear about it from your future boss. And you want to know about personality, that comes out in a conversation.
Mhm.
We've solved all of the things without having to read anything because what we know about us today in terms of how we consume information, we don't like to read a
Mhm.
10-minute document. Give us the so what? Give it to us quick. Give it to us in an entertaining format that we can consume. So we've been able to do that in about a 3 to 5 minute video.
I like that because I've also applied to some jobs that are required as the person who is applying to do a video thing, but sometimes it comes off a little bit contrived because you're like reading the prompt off a screen and then you're doing it. So like you can't really get your personality across, or you try too hard and it comes across that way as a person on the other side interviewing. But you as a third party recruiting person, having that conversation with somebody allows them to be a little bit more comfortable, I feel, and really let their personality shine in that 3 to 5 minutes without it sounding so rehearsed and robotic, I'd say. So I really like that idea.
Yeah, yeah. And it serves like when we lead with our video job description, when we're going to recruit for our clients, we have 10 times the response rate from a normal job description, just because people know who it is they'd be working for. So they're interested. And we're not
Mhm.
getting the response where it's like, yeah, this sounds like a cool job. Let's see where it goes. The response is, I want to work for Sammy.
Yeah.
I love what he's saying about this, or I love the team culture he's built. I want to work for him. And that's more impactful. So on the backside of that, we then, to your point, how there are some video applications that organizations have candidates put there. We do the same thing, but it's more personalized. So now that you've seen the candidate and you've said, hey, I've seen Mike on the video job description. I want to work for Mike. What's next? We actually give the candidates the opportunity to speak back, and not in a generic way that you've seen some organizations that just ask you to submit a video. We steer it. So we say, okay, great. We've come up with 3 questions from Mike, and these are the things that he cares about and wants to learn about you. So we're going to give you the opportunity to speak to these things. So there's no more guessing anymore. You don't have to look at a job description and see the 15 skills and experience they have and try to guess which ones they want to hear about. We're going to give you the answers. We're going to tell you like, hey, this is the things that are the most important. And we're going to let you sell yourself instead of hoping your resume or hoping the recruiter does a comprehensive job of telling your story, because nobody can tell your story like you can. And we want to give you the platform to do that.
Yeah, that's actually really good, because I think one of the other cliches that I always feel like was a thing was you don't really know whose side, quote unquote, the recruiter is on, especially if they're an internal recruitment agency, obviously from the company, they're siding with the company, but a third party, it sounds like you do the same video process as the screening with both sides. And so that way the trust is built with you as well, because you're probably a stranger to the individual who's applying. So it's building that kind of trust helps, because I feel like some people who don't really have that trust yet will maybe withhold a little bit of info when it comes to salary expectations, or whether they truly want something, or they'll just try to string it along and try to play every side because they don't really know. So how else or other ways are you able to really level the playing field in terms of being neutral? Obviously, everybody wins if the match is successful, but your goal is to make sure that everybody's first and foremost actually going to make it successful in that role.
Yeah, and it's a great question. And I think to understand, as an agency, the clients pay us. If somebody engages me to hire on their behalf, that's my client. So I am obviously going to make sure that they hire the right person for them. But what that means is I'm not concerned as to who that is, because I want to make sure it's the right match. And in order to make sure it's the right match, I need to make sure that candidates feel comfortable and confident being themselves. Because if they're not themselves and they just try to tell the client what they want to hear in the interview and get the job, then guess what? 3-6 months into that job, that's not really you. And that's not going to set anybody up for success. So I always tell candidates when I work with them, it's, listen, there's no right or wrong answer in an interview. The right answer is being yourself. And if you can be comfortable and confident being yourself, you've already won. If the job isn't for you, then thank them, because it's not the right opportunity that's going to allow you to flourish. Where if you are yourself and it is a match, then it's perfect, because you don't have to wear a mask or be different than who you were in that interview perspective. So it's all about just establishing that confidence. People can be vulnerable to be themselves, because honestly, that is their value prop. If you are yourself, nobody has your story. Nobody has seen the world through your eyes and experienced what you've experienced. So if you have confidence telling that story, you will have no competition, because nobody has your story. And that's what I want everybody to know and feel comfortable and confident telling that, regardless if they get the job or not, because there's confidence in knowing that you are great and you are unique and you are different.
Yeah, and that's like the number one cliche thing is be yourself in an interview, be genuine. A lot of people struggle with that. What helped me, for example, when I would do interviews is like being able to explain your reasoning of why you're interviewing. A lot of times they'll ask that if you're moving multiple times, especially in our generation and with COVID and everything like that being remote, the opportunities are more open, I would say. And even before that, if you have the potential. So what I would always say is the reason why I want this job is because I want to gain skills in XYZ. I think that based on the job posting that I think I would gain that. And here's what I'm able to already bring to the table. Because if you bring everything to the table and you're applying to something that's just like a lateral move, it's one, going to get boring quick, but two, it's like the person interviewing is going to be like, they have nothing to gain. It's probably just like a
Mhm.
stopgap, and then they're going to leave soon, so I'm going to disqualify them. And they say that's overqualification or whatever for a role, but it's really just because nobody wants to spend a year and a half training somebody and then they leave. So I think being genuine and upfront on what you expect from the role, outside of obviously salary, is something that is important, but what you bring to the table and what you hope to gain from the role. And I think when people actually express that and say that, it gives them a leg up. But what other things can you do to help the candidates relax and calm down before the interview? Because I feel like that's a leap of faith, almost similar to the nerves of a first date, right? You need to be yourself, but you get a little anxious. So how can you help them?
Yeah, yeah. I love what you just said there. Before I get into the latter, the previous about understanding the skills that you want to learn. And that's the first thing I advise anybody that's looking for a job when you're looking at job descriptions, because it's the only form right now that you can see. But don't scroll to the bottom of a job description and look at the skills and experience to see if it's a job you're interested in. A lot of people look there and be like, I can do this job. I want to apply. Don't look
Mhm.
there. Look at the skills section and the roles and responsibilities. Is this something you want to learn? Is this something
Mhm.
that interests you in terms of what the job actually is? Don't worry if you're qualified for it. We could tell a great story that can make a compelling case as to why you're a good candidate. But most candidates choose a job based on ones that they feel they're qualified to do instead of ones that they want to do, where, you want to find positions that are going to help you grow and
Mhm.
do things differently, express your skill sets differently. Listen, I'm realistic. I'm not saying you want to be a doctor, let's go apply to be a doctor, but within reason, there's opportunities to do something different. And if you're just doing the same things in a different role, then it's going to get boring and you're going to want to move. So I love what you said there about having that. And that takes some work internally to understand, what is it you want to do next? What excites you? What kind of challenges do you want to take on? What problems do you want to solve? What skills do you want to learn? And these are compelling things to talk about in an interview. That's how you set the table. Is why I'm interested about this job, is because it will allow me to
Mhm.
learn confidence in that, instead of I'm qualified to do this because I've been doing this for 10 years. I much prefer candidates that are open, because nobody knows how to do everything. And when you set the table by saying, I'm excited because I want to learn this, that's a great way to kick off the interview, because you're showing that you're excited about gaining a new skill and you're getting more out of the job than just a
Mhm.
paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. I always preface it with, what am I going to learn, and then what am I going to earn? Because I feel like that's the number one thing, is like, you can earn a different number, you can get a promotion, your job can change, but what kind of skill set are you going to learn? Because even in, this is now, I guess, 3 years ago, when my last interview for my last job that I had in corporate was like, essentially, why are you moving every year and a half, 2 years? I was like, I found data analytics. It took me like 3 years and two roles to figure out that this was something I like to do. And then I was on the IT side, and then I went to the business side to see that side of it. And now, like, I feel like I understand both sides of it, but I want to learn a new industry, because I was in like financial services, and then I went to like water management. And there was like totally different infrastructure, like products more than services. And then I worked with the sales team. So it was like the new industry is going to be a learning curve. Data analytics is data analytics. So I know that
Mhm.
skill set that I already have, but adding that piece on top of it is something I have never done. And then working closer with the sales team is something I've never done. So, like, to your point, being able to say these are the two things that I'm looking for to learn and get me excited for the job really helped me get that role. And it was a great job for however long I was there for. But I think one of the things that people struggle with, I think, like, is how to be authentic. You don't know if you're not going to be authentic, or the company's not going to be authentic and really what they're offering. Everybody's trying to play that trap game. What is your salary range? And then the candidate doesn't want to answer, because then they'll either lowball themselves or shoot them out of the role entirely. So, like, how do you toe the line between authenticity and being genuine and being yourself, but understanding that everybody's trying to get what's best, and sometimes that may not, you might have to withhold information till a later stage.
Yeah, and there's always this weird, and that's another thing that I'm trying to break about the hiring process. There's always this chess match, right? In terms of, we talk about compensation, or we talk about even just withholding maybe some things that you think aren't great qualities or experiences you've had, but that's life. The thing is you're being real, you're being authentic, and there's a confidence in that. In terms of compensation, I always like to tell candidates, stop giving ranges. Don't give a range, give a number. Because the problem with ranges is if you say, I'm looking for between 120 and 150, the clients hear 120, you really mean 150. You're already further apart. Just say 150, say a number, but make sure that it's something that you're comfortable with, right? Have confidence in what it is you ask for. Be realistic, do your homework to understand what the market is. And if you don't know, there's a lot of great resources online that you can go and look. Glassdoor has a lot of salary ranges and things, but know where you're at and the number you're looking for, and say it with confidence, because as soon as you give a range or waiver, like that's just, you're not setting yourself up for success there. And honestly, if you want that, and that's a driver for you to make a move as compensation, then you should be hard on that in terms of, this is what I'm looking for. And if they can't meet that, then you'd rather know that earlier on than invest hours in a process to get to a point where you're not happy with the compensation number. Now, laws are changing and organizations are having to transparently disclose salary information on job descriptions, which I love. Like, and I've been promoting for years for this to happen because it just saves everybody so much time. So hopefully that will change things. But on the comp note, understand what the number is, say it. Don't like waver, just, if somebody, what are you looking for? I'm looking for X. No justification needed. As soon as you talk more, you waver off it a little bit. Like, and I get it's an anxious conversation to have, but say it with confidence. And if it doesn't fit with them, there are other employers that will look at you.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's that piece that you said is, if it's not a fit, you want to find out as early as possible, because you don't want to be taking days off and moving your schedule around to try to find this job and get excited about it just for at the end for it not to happen. You want to polarize and understand as fast as possible, either this is going to work or this isn't. There's no point in going through with something that eventually you'll be upset about.
Correct.
So the communication stages, I feel like when the interviewer asks, do you have any other questions for me? Almost a standard one is, when can I expect a response for the next stage? But sometimes every company obviously has a different amount of stages, whether it be a screening and then hiring manager and then maybe another interview after that. Or if it's an executive position, it's probably levels of interviews. But the communication stages, I feel like, or the communication between stages rather, sometimes is a few days, sometimes is a week, sometimes is like you feel like you have to follow up multiple times. Where can you help with Spark, and the recruitment agency can help in that wing to make it more reliant and consistent?
Yeah. And I've been doing this a long time, where I know that this is a major flaw of, looking for a job. It's a very vulnerable process that candidates go through, and there's a lot of waiting and a lot of lack of or unclear information that makes it very difficult. So we change that. And because we're dealing directly with the hiring manager, there's no broken telephone. So there's no not hearing anything, or when we do, the information is they weren't a fit. That's helpful. Thanks. Appreciate the feedback. For us, and encourage anybody, if you are working with an agency, make sure they're directly working with the hiring manager. If they're working through a third party or through HR or through a talent group, then, anytime they're working through someone, it's going to delay getting information, and the information is not going to be satisfying to what you're looking for. So we only work with clients who are working directly. And we have, as part of our process, when we engage with candidates, we let them know, okay, after all the interviews are done, we do a calibration and we talk about all the interviews, what we liked, what the client liked, what the concerns were, and who they want to move forward. And we provide that all information as we work through the process. So it's important as a recruiter that you're clear about when candidates can expect feedback, and then you hold the client accountable to that to make sure it's part of the candidate experience. Like, feedback is not a hard thing to do, and it goes a long way for the candidate experience. If people know how it went, like, it's an easy thing, right? It's like, how did it go? What do they think? And if you can't provide that information, then that's a bad experience. So it's something so small that people fail to do that just make the experience so much more enjoyable for the candidate.
Yeah, and as a hiring manager in a previous life, and I'm dealing with hiring managers, I know they're super busy with their day to day, plus the people they already manage. So it's natural for them to want to punt as much of the admin work to the HR team. But it's good to know that you're working directly with the hiring manager, because HR, they're going to know what's good for the fit for the company, maybe, and the company culture, but not the skills needed, not for your team specifically. If you're a hiring manager and you're using a recruiter and you're going to pay that type of money to attract a good talent and market it, you might as well put in the work to actually get a good candidate, and you need to put in your time for that. So it's good that you only accept clients from that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. I have a lot of clients that inquire about working with us, and we say, if you're not willing to put in the time, I can't help you. Like, it's your team, it's not my team. Like, I'm not the one that's going to go and hire or find the perfect individual for you. I'm going to market you, and I'm going to elevate and amplify you, and we're going to find the best people that resonate with you. But it requires your time because it's your team. There's no replacement for time. That's the ultimate currency when you're looking at hiring, is you have to invest the time.
Agreed. And if people can take nothing else away from this episode, and they're going to go on with their day, probably listening in the car or doing their errands or whatever, can you give them one discipline related tip to find the right job before they go on with their day?
Yes. As a candidate, here's my tip, and it'll be two things, because, I think in terms of process, if you're looking for a job and you're scouring LinkedIn or whatever job board you're looking at for job descriptions, before you start looking at job descriptions, think about the best boss you've ever had, and think about why they were the best boss you've ever had. What were the types of problems you were solving? What were you doing? Why was it the best boss, the best job you've had? Write those down. Those now are going to be your criteria for how you're going to evaluate the next individual that you're interviewing with. An interview is a two-way thing. So be very clear on what you need from your next boss that will help you and give you the confidence to do the best work you can. When you're clear on that, you have that, great. So when they get to the question part of the interview, you know how you're going to vet the individual sitting on the other side of the table, because they need to meet this criteria for you to be successful. But that was my first tip. The second tip that I always love, when you kick off the interview, when you sit down, first question, and I want you to hit the interviewer with a question. I don't want them to hit you. Say, I'm super happy to be here today. What was it about my profile that got you excited to have this conversation? Hit them with that, because that's going to set the basis for the entire interview. If they don't know, they haven't even looked at your resume, they haven't invested any time, what can you expect to gather from this? But what you're going to get more often than not is, I'm so glad you asked, because I'm really curious about this project, this experience. This is what got me excited. Great. Let's talk about that. And now you have a direction and you can have a deep, meaningful conversation. Those are my two tips for candidates that I find make for way more focused and meaningful conversations that will lead to you landing your next dream job for sure.
Yeah, and I love that second one. I've never done that, but it's a good one.
Put
It's
him
a
on the
good one for
spot,
sure.
Sammy. Put him on the spot. Ask him, man. Ask him. It's great.
Definitely. So Mike, I loved having you on this call for sure. Where can people find you and connect to learn more, or to hopefully maybe use your services or get a job that they want?
Yeah, for sure. So sparkrecruiting.ca is the website. We have some free experiences that you can do, whether you're hiring or looking to be hired, just to help you get started on that journey and kind of leveraging social media and video to help with that. So there's some really cool free resources there. And then connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time. Mike Thompson at Spark Recruiting. I love connecting with people. I love learning people's stories and helping you hire or find your dream job.
Awesome. I'll definitely have both of those in the show notes. And I could tell you're really passionate about having people and their story shine through the job itself. At the end of the day, like you said, it's people are working in roles. And yes, the roles matter, the stuff that you do matter, but people remember the people that they work with. And that has a big impact on everything in your work life and your happiness in that. So I'm glad you're making those things happen. And I appreciate you on the call again.
I thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast. And likewise, when we talk about people connecting, this is an example of that. And I enjoyed our time together. And I'm really glad that we got to do this.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much, man.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to another episode here on YouTube. For more videos like this, please like and subscribe.